The gunshot echoed through the narrow alley behind Russo's trattoria, and Elena's heart stopped. Her father stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his white chef's coat. Two men in expensive suits stood at the alley entrance, one still holding his smoking pistol. "That was a warning, Giuseppe," the gunman said, his voice unervingly calm. "Next time, I aim for the head. You have 48 hours to produce $500,000, or we collect in other ways." Elena caught her father before he hit the ground, her hands instantly sticky with his blood. "Papa! Someone call an ambulance!" "No hospitals!" Giuseppe gasped, his weathered face contorted in pain. "Elena, no hospitals. They'll find us there." The men disappeared into the Chicago night as quickly as they'd arrived, leaving Elena kneeling in her father's blood, her mind racing. $500,000. They had maybe $3,000 in the restaurant's account. Her father had been keeping secrets, dangerous ones, and now those secrets were bleeding out between her fingers. 6 hours later, after a back-alley doctor had patched Giuseppe up in their apartment above the restaurant, Elena finally got the truth. Her father sat on their worn couch, his arm in a sling, looking 20 years older than he had that morning. 2 years ago, during the pandemic, the restaurant was dying. Giuseppe began, unable to meet her eyes. "We were going to lose everything. Your mother's dream, our home, your college fund. A man came to me, said he could help. Clean money, legitimate loan, 5% interest. I was desperate." "Who was he, Papa?" Elena's voice was steady. "He said his name was Vincent. He worked for the Cross organization." Giuseppe's voice cracked on the name. "I borrowed $200,000. I thought I could pay it back slowly as business recovered. But the terms changed. The interest became 20%, then 30%. Now they say I owe $500,000, and Damien Cross himself wants it paid." Elena's blood ran cold. Everyone in Chicago knew the Cross name, even if they pretended not to. Damien Cross had inherited his father's empire at 21 and had spent the last decade building it into something more terrifying than his father ever managed. He was legitimate on paper, criminal in practice, and utterly untouchable. "We have to go to the police," Elena said, though she already knew what her father would say. "And tell them what? That I took money from the Mafia? They'll arrest me, Elena, and Cross will still come for what he's owed. These people don't stop. They don't forgive." Giuseppe grabbed her hand with his good arm. "You and Marco need to run. Take what money we have and disappear. I'll face this alone. Marco's in Seattle for his engineering program. He doesn't need to know." Elena's mind was already working through impossible calculations. "And I'm not running anywhere. We'll figure this out." But 48 hours wasn't enough time to figure anything out, and Elena knew it. She spent the next day trying every avenue she could think of. Banks laughed at her loan applications. Friends and extended family had nothing close to that kind of money. By the second evening, as the sun set over Chicago, Elena was out of options. The men returned exactly 48 hours after the shooting. Elena answered the door before they could knock, her father still resting upstairs. This time there were 3 of them, and they didn't draw weapons. They didn't need to. "Giuseppe Russo," the lead man said. "We're here to collect." "He's injured because of you," Elena said, blocking the doorway with her small frame. "He needs more time." "Miss Russo, I presume?" The man's expression softened slightly. "I'm Vincent DeMarco. I'm sorry about the shooting, but your father was warned repeatedly. Mr. Cross doesn't appreciate being ignored. My father has nothing. The restaurant is barely breaking even. You can't get blood from a stone. Then we'll take the stone." Vincent pulled out a folder. "The property deed transfers to the Cross organization. Your father faces additional consequences for defaulting, and you both have 24 hours to vacate." "Additional consequences?" Elena's voice rose. "You shot him. That was a warning. Additional consequences are much worse." Vincent's tone remained professional, almost sympathetic. "This is business, Miss Russo. Nothing personal." Elena's hands clenched into fists. She thought of her mother, who died of cancer 5 years ago after building this restaurant from nothing. She thought of Marco, brilliant and innocent, who'd finally escaped Chicago's violence. She thought of her father, bleeding in an alley for the crime of trying to survive. "Let me speak to Damien Cross," Elena said suddenly. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "That's not how this works. You said this is business. I want to negotiate. That's business, isn't it?" Elena's heart hammered, but she kept her voice level. "If he wants his money, he can at least look me in the eye while he takes everything we have." Something flickered across Vincent's face. Respect, maybe, or pity. "Mr. Cross doesn't meet with debtors." "Then I'll keep the deed. Sue us. Drag this through courts for years while you get nothing." Elena had no idea if that would actually work, but she sold the bluff. "Or he can give me 10 minutes to make a counteroffer." Vincent studied her for a long moment, then pulled out his phone. He stepped away, speaking in low tones Elena couldn't hear. When he returned, his expression was unreadable. "Mr. Cross will see you tonight. Come alone or the offer is void." He handed her a business card with an address in Gold Coast, Chicago's wealthiest neighborhood. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. After they left, Elena's father emerged from upstairs, having heard everything. "Elena, no. You don't know what you're walking into. These people are dangerous." "We're out of options, Papa." Elena's voice was steadier than she felt. "Maybe I can reason with him, buy us more time, work out a payment plan. And if you can't? If he wants something else?" Giuseppe's eyes were haunted. "These men, they take what they want from women, Elena. I won't let you sacrifice yourself. You don't have a choice. Neither of us do." Elena kissed her father's forehead. "I'll be back before midnight. Everything will be fine." She didn't believe her own words, but she needed him to. At 8:45, Elena stood outside a converted historical building in Gold Coast. It looked like a museum, not a criminal headquarters. Vincent met her at the entrance. Phone, purse, any electronics. Elena handed everything over, and Vincent passed her through a metal detector before leading her inside. The interior was breathtaking. She recognized a Caravaggio, possibly original, hanging casually in the hallway like it wasn't worth millions. "Mr. Cross will see you in his office," Vincent said, stopping before an ornate wooden door. "Some advice, Miss Russo. Don't lie to him. He values honesty, even when it's ugly." Then Vincent opened the door and gestured her inside. The office was enormous, but she barely noticed the room's opulence because her attention fixed on the man behind the massive desk. Damien Cross was younger than she'd expected, maybe early 30s, and nothing like the monster she'd imagined. "Elena Russo," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "You wanted to negotiate. I'm listening." Elena forced herself to walk forward, to not show fear. "My father can't pay what he owes. Not in any reasonable time frame. I'm aware. That's why I'm taking the property." Damien set down his pen, giving her his full attention. "You came all this way to tell me something I already know?" "I came to offer an alternative." Elena's nails dug into her palms. "Let my father keep the restaurant. Give him reasonable terms to actually pay back what he borrowed, not this inflated amount. In exchange, I'll work for you." Damien's expression didn't change. "Work for me?" "Yes, whatever you need. Bookkeeping, managing properties. I have a degree in art history, so maybe your galleries. 2 years, full-time, whatever salary you decide." The words came out in a rush. "After 2 years, the debt is cleared completely." "You have no idea what you're offering," Damien said, echoing Vincent's earlier warning. He stood, walking around the desk with predatory grace. "Do you know what I do, Miss Russo? You run a criminal empire disguised as legitimate businesses, so you clearly need people who can navigate both worlds." A ghost of a smile touched Damien's lips. "Honest. Vincent said you had spine." He circled her slowly, and Elena fought the urge to turn and track his movement. "But you're not offering to be an employee. You're offering to be collateral. Property. Do you understand the distinction?" "I understand. I'm out of options." "No." Damien stopped in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. You could run. You could let your father face the consequences of his choices. You could go to the police, however futile that would be. You have options. You're choosing this one. Why? Because he's my father. Elena's voice wavered slightly. Because he was trying to save our family's legacy. Because someone has to pay for his desperation. And I'd rather it be me than him. Damien studied her face for a long moment, and Elena felt dissected under that gray gaze. 2 years, he finally said. You live here on site. You're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You follow every instruction I give you without question or hesitation. You don't contact your family except through supervised channels. You don't leave the building without permission. If you run, your father pays with more than property. Do you accept these terms? Elena's mouth went dry. This wasn't employment. This was servitude. Do I have a choice? There's always a choice. You just might not like the alternatives. Damien returned to his desk, pulling out a document. This is a contract. Legal, binding, thorough. It specifies your obligations and my guarantees. Your father keeps the restaurant, the original loan terms are restored, and after 2 years, all debts are forgiven. But if you violate any terms, the protection ends immediately. He slid the contract across the desk along with a pen. Elena picked it up with shaking hands, scanning the dense legal language. It was exactly as he'd described, horrifyingly official. There was even a clause about confidentiality, another about termination conditions. This man legitimized everything, made slavery look legal on paper. If I sign this, my father is safe? Elena asked. Completely. He'll never see me or my people again, as long as you fulfill your end. Elena thought of her father's blood in the alley. She thought of her mother's memory, tied to that restaurant. She thought of Marco, innocent and far away, who didn't need to know his family was drowning. She signed. Damien took the contract, examining her signature. Vincent will show you to your quarters. You start immediately. He pressed a button on his desk, and Vincent appeared at the door as if summoned by magic. One more thing, Miss Russo. Elena turned back, and Damien's expression was unreadable. Welcome to your cage. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The room Vincent led her to was on the 3rd floor. Then Vincent closed the door, and Elena heard the lock click from the outside. She was alone in her gilded cage. The first week was designed to break her, Elena realized quickly. Damien didn't need a bookkeeper or art consultant. He had people for that. What he wanted was to see if she'd crumble under humiliation. Her first task was serving drinks at a private poker game. She was given a uniform. Elena served drinks and stayed silent, as instructed. She observed everything. The power dynamics were fascinating despite her situation. 5 of the men were afraid of Damien, laughing too hard at his jokes, folding when he raised. The 6th seemed to think he was Damien's equal. Your new girl is pretty. Does she come with the membership? She's not part of the entertainment, Marcus, Damien said, his tone mild. Everything's negotiable though, right? Marcus reached out and grabbed Elena's wrist as she turned away. What do you say, sweetheart? Want to earn some extra? Elena froze, her heart hammering. She looked at Damien, whose expression hadn't changed, though something dark flickered in those gray eyes. Let go of her, Damien said quietly. Come on, Cross. Share the wealth. Marcus squeezed tighter. I'll pay premium. Damien moved faster than Elena could track. One moment he was sitting, the next he had Marcus's hand bent backward at an impossible angle. The sound of breaking bones was sickeningly loud in the sudden silence. Marcus screamed. She's under my protection, Damien said. That means no one touches her. No one speaks to her inappropriately. No one even looks at her too long. Do you understand? Or do I need to break the other hand? I understand, Marcus gasped. Christ, I understand. Damien released him, and Marcus cradled his shattered hand. Vincent, please escort Marcus out and make sure he finds a hospital, and remove him from all future events. He's no longer welcome. After the room cleared, only Elena and Damien remained. She stood frozen, her wrist still aching from Marcus's grip. "Thank you," she whispered. Damien didn't look at her. "Don't thank me. That wasn't for you. That was about respect and property rights. You're mine for 2 years, which means you're under my protection. But don't mistake protection for kindness." He left her standing there, confused and shaken, trying to understand the man who just defended her honor while reminding her she was his property. The tasks continued, cleaning his office while he worked, filing documents, organizing his private library. Damien barely acknowledged her presence, treating her like expensive furniture. But Elena was observant, and she started noticing things. The way he'd pause when looking at certain paintings, his expression softening. The classical music he played when he thought he was alone. The nightmare she'd heard through the walls one night, though by morning his mask was firmly back in place. 3 weeks in, Elena was reorganizing his art storage room when she found a painting filed incorrectly. "This is filed wrong," she said when Damien came to check on her progress. He looked up from his tablet. "Excuse me, this piece. It's filed under Baroque studies, but the technique and composition are distinctly Caravaggio. It should be in the Italian Renaissance section, subcategory Caravaggio Circle, probably dated between 1595 and 1600 based on the chiaroscuro treatment." Elena realized she was rambling and stopped. "Sorry. Art history degree. Occupational hazard." Damien walked over, examining the painting with new interest. "You're right. I acquired this last year, and my consultant dated it to the Baroque period." "Your consultant is wrong." Elena pointed to specific details. "See the dramatic light source, the realistic anatomy, the psychological intensity in the hand positioning? That's pure Caravaggio influence. Baroque art moved away from this kind of naturalism toward more idealized forms." For the first time since she'd arrived, Damien looked at her like she was a person rather than an obligation. "What else is filed wrong?" They spent the next 2 hours going through his collection, Elena correcting attribution after attribution. Damien listened intently, asking intelligent questions, and Elena forgot for brief moments that she was a prisoner. When they discussed art, she saw glimpses of someone underneath the cold exterior. Someone who genuinely cared about beauty and history and the stories paintings told. "You should be working in a museum," Damien said as they finished. "I was supposed to start a restoration internship at the Art Institute," Elena admitted. "I deferred it when this happened. Because of your father's debt. Because of my choice." Elena met his eyes. "I don't blame him for what I decided." Something shifted in Damien's expression. "Get some rest. Tomorrow you're helping Sophia at the gallery." He left before Elena could respond, but she felt something had changed between them. Something small but significant. That night, Elena was allowed her weekly phone call with her family. Vincent supervised as always, sitting nearby while she spoke to her father on a monitored line. "Papa, how are you? How's the restaurant?" "Better. We had a good weekend, actually. How are you, Bella? This job, it's treating you well." Elena forced brightness into her voice. "It's fine. Boring, mostly. Lots of filing and organizing. The art collection here is amazing, though. I'm learning a lot." They chatted for the allotted 10 minutes, careful conversations that revealed nothing real. After she hung up, Elena allowed herself 5 minutes of crying in her locked room. Then she washed her face and prepared for another day. She didn't know Damien watched these calls on security footage. She didn't know he saw her break down every single time. And she definitely didn't know that watching her cry made him pour 3 fingers of whiskey and stare at the Chicago skyline for hours, hating himself in ways he'd forgotten he could feel. The next morning, he was crueler than usual. He assigned her to clean the entire 3rd floor, an impossible task that would take 12 hours. When she finished at midnight, exhausted and aching, he inspected her work and pointed out minor imperfections, making her redo sections. "Is this really necessary?" Elena finally asked, her patience fraying. "I'm not your maid. You're whatever I decide you are," Damien said coldly. "That's what you agreed to." "I agreed to work, not to be degraded." Then you didn't read the contract carefully enough. He stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. You're here because your father made bad choices. Don't forget that. Elena's eyes filled with furious tears. My father made desperate choices to save his family. What's your excuse for being cruel? Damien's jaw tightened. Get out of my sight. Elena fled to her room, slamming the door as much as the lock would allow. She didn't understand why he was so hot and cold, protective one day and vicious the next. She didn't understand why a man who clearly appreciated art and beauty seemed determined to destroy any softness in himself. What she didn't see was Damien returning to his office and putting his fist through a painting, hating himself for the tears in her eyes, hating himself more for caring that he'd put them there. 2 months into her captivity, Elena's world expanded slightly. Damien assigned her to help Sophia Chun at one of his legitimate art galleries. Sophia was the first person who'd treated Elena like a human being rather than a problem. So you're Cross's new project, Sophia said as she showed Elena around the gallery. Word of advice. Don't fall for the tortured soul routine. He's dangerous. Full stop. I'm not falling for anything, Elena protested. I'm just surviving. That's what I told myself too. Sophia's smile was sad. 4 years ago, Damien caught me forging paintings. I was good, really good. Instead of turning me in, he gave me the same offer he gave you. Work off my debt. 2 years. You stayed after your time was up? He offered me a partnership in the galleries. Legitimate work, good money, and I'm really good at spotting fakes now that I used to make them. Sophia touched a sculpture absently. But here's the thing, Elena. Damien collects broken things. Art, people, businesses on the edge of collapse. He fixes them, controls them, and keeps them. You need to decide if that's the life you want. Elena thought about that conversation all day. She didn't want this life. But she also couldn't deny that something about Damien intrigued her. The contrast between his violence and his appreciation for beauty. The way he'd looked at her when she talked about Caravaggio like he was seeing her for the first time. She was probably losing her mind. Stockholm Syndrome was real, and she needed to remember that Damien Cross was her captor, not her savior. That resolve lasted until the charity gala. Damien appeared at her door at 6 in the evening, holding a garment bag. You're accompanying me to an event tonight. Be ready in an hour. I don't have anything appropriate for a gala, Elena said. You do now. He handed her the bag and left. Inside was the most beautiful dress Elena had ever seen. There were also shoes, jewelry, everything she'd need. When she emerged an hour later, Damien's reaction was almost imperceptible. But Elena caught it, and something warm unfurled in her chest before she could stop it. You look acceptable, Damien said, his tone carefully neutral. You look acceptable too, Elena replied, and was rewarded with the ghost of a smile. The gala was at the Museum of Contemporary Art, a fundraiser for arts education. Elena found herself genuinely enjoying the evening despite the circumstances. Damien played the charming benefactor perfectly, and she played the role of his girlfriend, smiling and making small talk with Chicago's elite. You're good at this? Damien murmured at one point. Acting? Elena asked. Belonging. These people accept you immediately. Because I'm with you. They're afraid of you. Some are. Some respect me. And some, like Luca Santoro over there, are looking for weakness. Damien's voice hardened. The man heading toward us in the gray suit. Be polite but distant. He's dangerous. Luca Santoro was handsome in a cold way. Damien, good to see you. And who is this lovely creature? Luca. This is Elena. Elena. Luca runs several restaurants in the city. Among other things. Luca took Elena's hand, kissing it in a gesture that made her skin crawl. Damien, you've been holding out on us. I didn't know you were seeing anyone. I keep my private life private. Clearly. Luca's eyes lingered on Elena. If you ever tire of Damien's intensity, my dear, give me a call. I'm much more fun at parties. I'll keep that in mind, Elena said politely, though she pressed closer to Damien instinctively. After Luca left, Damien's tension was palpable. Stay away from that man. He's not someone you want attention from. Who is he really? A rival. And someone who'd use you against me if he got the chance. Damien's gray eyes met hers. Which is why you're never to be alone anywhere he might access you. Understood. Elena nodded, disturbed by the implication. She was beginning to understand that Damien's world was more complex than simple crime. There were layers of danger, political maneuvering, and people like Luca who saw everyone as potential leverage. They left the gala around 11, Damien's driver pulling up to take them home. The gunshots shattered that illusion. 3 rapid cracks, and suddenly the car's rear windshield exploded. Damien moved on pure instinct, pulling Elena down to the floor and covering her body with his. More shots rang out, hitting the reinforced car panels, and the driver accelerated hard. "Stay down," Damien ordered, his voice deadly calm despite the chaos. Elena's heart hammered so hard she thought it might explode. She could feel Damien's weight pressing her down, protective and imprisoning all at once. Another shot grazed the side mirror, and then they were around a corner, speeding away. Only when they were several blocks away did Damien let her up. Elena was shaking, adrenaline flooding her system. She looked at Damien, about to ask if he was okay, and saw blood spreading across his shoulder. "You're shot." Elena's hands moved without thinking, pressing against the wound. "It grazed me. I'm fine." But Damien's face was pale, his jaw tight with pain. "You're not fine, you're bleeding." Elena's medical training from volunteering at free clinics kicked in. "We need to get you to a hospital." "No hospitals. Vincent will handle it." Damien pulled out his phone with his good hand, making rapid calls. His eyes never left Elena's face. "Why did you do that?" "Do what?" "Pull me down. You grabbed my jacket and pulled me down before I moved. That's why the shot missed my head." Elena stared at him, not having realized what she'd done. "I don't know. Instinct. Stupid instinct." Damien's voice was rough. "You could have been hit. You should have stayed down, not tried to save me." "Sorry for keeping you alive?" Elena snapped, her fear manifesting as anger. They glared at each other for a long moment, something electric crackling between them. Then Damien laughed, actually laughed, the sound surprising them both. "Vincent was right. You have spine." Back at the building, a doctor arrived within 20 minutes. Damien insisted on being treated in his private quarters, and he insisted Elena stay while the bullet graze was cleaned and stitched. She sat in a chair, watching him refuse pain medication like he needed to feel everything. "It was Luca," Vincent said, appearing after the doctor left. "We have 3 of his men in custody. One of them talked before we convinced him to stop breathing." "How poetic," Damien said dryly, flexing his shoulder and wincing. "He made his move faster than I anticipated. We'll need to respond." "Already in motion." "But boss," she saw. Vincent glanced at Elena. "She knows now. She knew before. Now she's just seen it up close." Damien's eyes found Elena's. "Does it scare you? Knowing exactly what I am?" Elena thought about the casual way Vincent had mentioned killing a man. She thought about the coldness in both their voices when discussing revenge. She thought about Damien, who'd covered her body with his own without hesitation. "Yes," she admitted, "but not as much as it probably should." After Vincent left, Damien and Elena sat in heavy silence. He was drinking whiskey left-handed, staring at the city lights. She knew she should go back to her room, but she found herself unable to move. "Why do you do this?" Elena finally asked. "You clearly have the intelligence and resources to be legitimate. Why choose this life?" "I didn't choose it. I inherited it." Damien's voice was distant. "My father built this empire. When I was 21, a rival family put 3 bullets in his chest while I watched. I could either take over or let everything he built crumble while his killers took control." "I'm sorry." Elena meant it. "Don't be. He was a monster too." Damien took another drink. "But he was my monster. And in this world, you're either a wolf or prey. I chose wolf." "What about being human?" "Humans are prey." Damien finally looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You should go to bed, Elena. You've had enough excitement for one night. Elena stood but paused at the door. Thank you for protecting me tonight. I protect my investments. But his eyes told a different story. Elena lay in bed that night, unable to sleep. Her mind kept replaying the moment Damien had covered her body with his, the absolute certainty that he'd take a bullet for her. He'd said she was property, an investment, but his actions suggested something more complicated. She was in danger, she realized. Not from Luca or rival gangs. She was in danger of seeing Damien Cross as something other than her captor. And that way led to madness. But when she finally slept, she dreamed of gray eyes and Renaissance paintings, of blood and silk dresses, of a man who collected broken things and maybe, just maybe, wanted to be collected too. The next morning, everything changed. Damien appeared at her door with a new proposal. You're moving to the gallery full-time, he announced. Working with Sophia, learning the business. Your skills are wasted on menial tasks. Why the sudden change? Damien's expression was carefully neutral. Because after last night, I realized keeping you locked away makes you more of a target, not less. If people think you're just another employee, Luca loses interest. If they think you're important to me, he trailed off. Am I? Elena asked before she could stop herself. Important to you? You're my responsibility. That's all that matters. But he couldn't quite meet her eyes. Working at the gallery was freedom of a sort. Elena threw herself into the work, learning everything Sophia could teach her about art sales, authentication, client relations. She discovered she was good at it, her art history knowledge combining with natural people skills. She also discovered the gallery was a front for money laundering. But by now that didn't surprise her. Damien's entire world was layers of legitimate business hiding criminal activity. The art world, with its subjective pricing and cash transactions, was perfect for moving money. Does it bother you? Sophia asked one day, noticing Elena's expression as they processed a suspiciously large cash sale. Yes, Elena admitted, but I don't know what to do about it. Reporting it means breaking my contract, which means my father suffers. Staying silent makes me complicit. Welcome to moral compromise. It's the price of survival in Damien's world. Sophia touched her arm sympathetically. For what it's worth, I think he's different around you. Less cold. Almost human sometimes. Elena wanted to deny it, but she'd noticed it too. The way Damien would appear at the gallery, ostensibly to check inventory, but really just to talk to her about newly acquired pieces. The way he'd started leaving art books in her room, rare volumes she'd mentioned wanting to read. The way he'd look at her when he thought she wasn't watching, hunger and regret warring in those gray eyes. 3 months into her servitude, Elena's brother Marco showed up at the gallery. Surprise visit, Marco said, pulling her into a hug. I had a break between semesters. Thought I'd check on you and Dad. This job must be amazing if it's keeping you too busy to call me back. Elena's stomach dropped. She'd been so careful during supervised calls, never mentioning where she actually was. Marco, what are you doing here? Dad told me you were working at a gallery in Gold Coast. I looked it up, and here you are. Marco looked around appreciatively. This place is incredible. And wait, is that guy checking you out? Because as your big brother, I'm obligated to intimidate him. Elena turned and felt her blood freeze. Damien stood near the entrance, watching them with unreadable eyes. That's my boss, Elena said quickly. Mr. Cross, this is my brother Marco. He surprised me with a visit. Damien approached with the polished charm he used for outsiders. Marco, pleasure to meet you. Your sister is one of our most valuable employees. Really? That's great. Marco shook Damien's hand, completely oblivious to the danger. She's always been crazy talented with art stuff. Hey, any chance I could take her to lunch? Family time and all. Of course. Elena, take the afternoon. Damien's smile didn't reach his eyes. Family is important. They went to a cafe nearby, Marco chattering happily about his engineering classes. Elena tried to act normal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that Damien had allowed this as a test. Or worse, a reminder. So what's the real story? Marco finally asked. And don't lie. I know something's wrong. Dad's been weird, you're weird, and that boss of yours looked at me like he was calculating my net worth. Elena wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to beg him to help, to run, to do something. But she thought of Damien's warning. If she broke the contract, the protection ended. And Marco, brilliant and innocent, was exactly the kind of person people like Luca would use as leverage. I'm fine, Marco. Really. Elena forced a smile. The job is demanding, and I'm working long hours. That's all. Mr. Cross is intense, but he's been fair. Elena. Marco grabbed her hand across the table, his young face serious. I'm not a kid anymore. If you're in trouble, tell me. We're family. We figure things out together. There's nothing to figure out. Elena squeezed his hand, fighting tears. I promise. Now tell me more about your thesis project. Dad said something about sustainable infrastructure. She steered the conversation to safer waters, but Marco's eyes remained concerned. When they returned to the gallery 2 hours later, Damien was waiting. Marco, wonderful meeting you, Damien said, shaking his hand again. Elena, could I have a word in my office? Marco hugged her goodbye, whispering, call me if you need anything. Anything at all. Then he left, and Elena followed Damien to the back office with dread pooling in her stomach. The moment the door closed, Damien's pleasant mask dropped. Your brother is leverage now. You understand that? He doesn't know anything, Elena said quickly. He thinks this is a normal job, which is how it needs to stay. Damien poured himself a drink, his movements controlled but tense. Luca saw you two together. By tomorrow, he'll know exactly who Marco is and where to find him. Elena's legs went weak. No, please. He's innocent in all of this. No one's innocent. Damien's voice was harsh. Your father borrowed from criminals. You offered yourself as collateral. And your brother, by extension, became a potential target. That's how this works. Then protect him. Elena's voice broke. You said I'm under your protection. Extend it to him. Please. At what cost to you? Damien turned, his gray eyes boring into hers. What are you willing to give for his safety? Elena's breath caught. She understood what he was asking, the terrible choice he was laying before her. Whatever you want. Just keep him safe. Whatever I want. Damien repeated softly, moving closer. Do you know what I want, Elena? Her heart hammered. Tell me. I want you to stop looking at me like I'm a monster you're trying to find humanity in. I want you to stop making me question every decision I've made for the last decade. I want you to stop being someone I care about keeping alive. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. But mostly, I want you to stop being the first person in 10 years who makes me feel like something other than my father's ghost. Elena stared at him, shocked by the raw admission. Damien, your brother gets protection. Full security detail, though he'll never know it. But you stay away from him. No more surprise visits. No more making me remember I'm capable of caring about something other than power. Damien stepped back, his walls slamming back into place. That's the cost. Do you accept? Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. Good. Get back to work. She fled the office, her mind reeling. Damien had basically admitted he had feelings for her, then immediately punished her for it by isolating her further. It was the most twisted declaration she'd ever received, and she hated that part of her wanted to go back and demand he explain himself properly. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Around 2 in the morning, she wandered the building, knowing she'd probably get in trouble but too restless to care. She found herself drawn to the 4th floor, an area she'd never been allowed to access before. The door was unlocked. Inside, she discovered Damien's private art studio. Canvases lined the walls, all paintings Damien had created himself. They were abstract, dark, full of violent brushstrokes and anguished color, but they were also breathtaking, raw emotion translated into visual form. These were the paintings of a soul in torment, someone desperately trying to express feelings he'd locked away. You're not supposed to be here. Elena spun around. Damien stood in the doorway, wearing only sleep pants, his chest bare except for the bandage on his shoulder from the shooting. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry. I couldn't sleep," and the door was open, and Elena gestured helplessly at the paintings. "These are incredible. Why do you hide them?" "Because they're honest." Damien entered the room, moving to stand beside a particularly violent piece, all reds and blacks. "I made this the night I killed my first man. I was 22. He'd betrayed my father, gotten him killed. Vincent handed me a gun and said this was how it worked. You avenge blood with blood. Did it help? The revenge? No. It just made me like them. Like all the monsters I'd watched my father do business with." Damien touched the painting lightly. "I started painting that night because I needed to put the horror somewhere. These canvases hold every piece of humanity I had to sacrifice to survive." Elena moved closer, studying the painting with new understanding. "You're not a monster, Damien. Monsters don't create art. They don't protect people or collect beauty or torture themselves with guilt. You don't know what I've done. Then tell me." Elena turned to face him. "Stop treating me like a child or an investment or whatever else you use to keep distance. Tell me the truth." They stood in the dim studio, the air heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Damien spoke. "I've killed 17 people directly, hundreds more indirectly through orders. I've destroyed families, ruined lives, burned businesses to the ground. I've used violence and fear to build an empire my father would be proud of." His voice was flat, reciting facts. "I had a fiancée once, right after my father died. Valentina. Beautiful, smart, seemed to actually care about me. Turned out she was a plant from the Marino family, feeding them information. When I found out, I had to make an example. I didn't kill her myself, but I gave the order." Elena's breath caught. "How long ago?" 10 years. I was 22, stupid enough to believe in love, naive enough to think someone could want me for reasons other than power." Damien laughed bitterly. "She taught me that love is a luxury people like me can't afford. Every person who gets close becomes a target or a traitor. So I stopped letting anyone close. Until me. Until you." Damien's eyes met hers, raw and vulnerable. "You're not supposed to be here, Elena. You're not supposed to reorganize my art collection and quote Caravaggio and save my life in car chases. You're supposed to be a debt I collect and forget. But instead, you're here in my studio at 2 in the morning, looking at my soul hanging on these walls, and I can't figure out if you're my salvation or my destruction." Elena stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his bare skin. "What if I'm both? Then we're both damned." But Damien didn't move away. "I think we've been damned since the moment I signed that contract." Elena reached up, her fingers barely brushing his jaw. "Maybe even before that. Maybe from the moment you looked at me and saw something other than collateral." "Elena." Her name was a warning and a plea. "Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me I'm imagining the way you look at me, the way you protect me, the way you leave art books in my room like secret love letters." Elena's voice shook. "Tell me I'm crazy, and I'll go back to my locked room and remember I'm your prisoner." "You're not crazy." Damien's hand came up, cupping her face. "You're the only sane thing in my insane world. And that's exactly why this can't happen." "Why not?" "Because everyone I love dies or betrays me. Because you deserve better than a man with blood on his hands. Because in 2 years you're supposed to walk away free, and if we do this, I'll never let you go." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I'm trying to protect you from me." "What if I don't want protection?" Elena leaned into his touch. "What if I want the choice, even if it's the wrong one?" They stared at each other for a long moment, balanced on a knife's edge. Then Damien made his choice. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate and hungry. 10 years of loneliness meeting months of tension. Elena gasped against his mouth, and he pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair. She melted into him, everything she'd been feeling crystallizing into this moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damien pressed his forehead against hers. "This is a mistake." "Probably. Elena's hands rested on his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat. Are we stopping? We should. But are we? Damien answered by kissing her again, and this time there was no hesitation. He lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her out of the studio. They made it as far as his bedroom before falling onto the bed, a tangle of desperate hands and shed clothing. Tell me to stop, Damien murmured against her neck. Tell me you don't want this. I can't. Elena arched into him. I should, but I can't. They made love like the world was ending, urgent and raw and real. And when it was over, Elena lay in Damien's arms. What happens now? Elena whispered. I don't know. Damien's voice was rough. I've never been here before. Scary, isn't it? Caring about someone. Terrifying. He pulled her closer. But also the first time in 10 years I've felt alive. They fell asleep tangled together, and for a few hours the world outside didn't exist. There was no debt, no danger, no empire built on blood. Just two broken people finding something like peace in each other's arms. But peace never lasted long in Damien's world. Elena woke to an empty bed and the sound of raised voices downstairs. She dressed quickly, her heart sinking as she recognized the urgency in the tones. Something had happened. She found Damien in his office with Vincent, both men looking grim. They stopped talking when she entered. What's wrong? Elena demanded. Damien's expression was controlled, but she could see the fury beneath. Luca made his move. One of his men tried to grab Marco from his apartment in Seattle last night. Elena's world tilted. Is he okay? He's fine. My people stopped it. Damien stood, moving to her. But Luca sent a message. He knows Marco matters to you, which means he matters to me. He's trying to draw me into a war. Then don't give him one. Please, just keep Marco safe. It's not that simple anymore. Vincent spoke up. Boss, we need to respond. Luca attacked your people. If you don't retaliate, you look weak. Other families will start circling. I know the game, Vincent. Damien's jaw was tight. Elena, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Elena thought about everything that had happened. The contract, the captivity, the violence. But she also thought about the man who'd covered her body with his during a shooting. The artist who poured his soul onto canvases. The person who'd admitted he cared for her even though it terrified him. Yes, she said. I trust you. Then I need you to do something dangerous. Something that might save us all or get us killed. Damien pulled out his phone, showing her a text message. It was from Luca, offering to meet and discuss terms. He wants to negotiate? Elena asked. He wants to gloat and make demands. But it's also an opportunity. Damien's eyes held hers. I want you to come with me. Be visible at my side. Let him think he's rattled me enough that I'm bringing you as a shield or a bargaining chip. You want to use me as bait. I want to use his assumptions against him. Luca thinks women are weakness. He thinks having you there makes me vulnerable. But really, it puts you in position to gather information we need. Damien's hands framed her face. I won't let anything happen to you. I swear it. But I need your help. Elena's mind raced. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was everything she should refuse. But she thought about Marco, about her father, about the impossible position they were all in. And she thought about Damien, who was finally treating her like a partner instead of property. What do you need me to do? Before you find out what happens at that meeting, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell, drop a comment below telling me what you think of Damien and Elena's relationship. Is this love or just survival? Let me know your thoughts. The meeting was set for neutral territory, an upscale restaurant Luca owned in downtown Chicago. Elena wore another dress Damien had provided. Remember, Damien said in the car, you're there to observe, listen to everything, watch his reactions. Luca's tells are subtle, but they're there. And if anything goes wrong, you run. Don't try to help, don't try to be brave. You run, and Vincent's people will extract you. What about you? I'll be fine. I've survived worse than Luca Santoro. But Damien's hand was tight on hers. The restaurant had been cleared of other patrons. Luca sat at a center table, 2 guards flanking him. He stood as they approached, Damien and the lovely Elena. How domestic. Luca gestured to the chairs across from him. Please sit. I took the liberty of ordering wine. They sat, and Elena immediately began doing what Damien had asked. She watched Luca's hands, his eyes, his posture. The way he kept glancing at a phone on the table. The way his guards seemed tense, anticipating something. Let's skip the pleasantries, Damien said. You tried to take something of mine. That was a mistake. Was it? Seems to me I proved how vulnerable you've become. Luca's eyes slid to Elena. One pretty face, and the great Damien Cross forgets basic security. Marco is protected. Your man is dead. So what did you actually accomplish besides declaring war? I accomplished showing the other families that you're weak. That you've let a woman compromise your judgment. Luca leaned forward. Here's my offer. Give her to me for, say, a month. Let me show you how to properly break someone. In exchange, I'll back off the kid and we call it even. Elena's blood ran cold, but she kept her expression neutral. Damien's hand on her thigh tightened slightly, the only sign of his rage. Counteroffer, Damien said calmly. You apologize, pay reparations for the attempt on my people, and I let you keep breathing. Luca laughed. You really have gone soft. The old Damien would have burned my restaurant down by now. The old Damien had less to lose. Exactly my point. Luca's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his smile widening. You know what's funny? I actually came here hoping to negotiate. Territory, percentages, the usual. But then I realized something watching you too. She's not just an asset. She's the asset. The thing that makes you human. And humans make mistakes. Everything happened at once. Luca's guards moved, but so did Vincent's people, emerging from the kitchen. Gunshots exploded through the restaurant. Damien pulled Elena down, shielding her as they'd practiced. But this time, Elena saw something Damien didn't. Luca pulling a gun, aiming at Damien's unprotected back. Elena moved on pure instinct. She grabbed a wine bottle from the table and threw it. Her aim was terrible, but it was enough to throw off Luca's shot. The bullet went wide, and then Damien was moving, disarming Luca with brutal efficiency. The fight was over in seconds. Vincent's people had the guards subdued. Damien had Luca pinned against the table, a gun to his head. Give me one reason not to end this now, Damien growled. Because killing me starts a war you can't win, Luca gasped. The Santoro family is bigger than me. You kill me, and 50 soldiers come for you. Damien looked at Elena, and she saw the conflict in his eyes. She also saw something else. Luca's phone, still on the table, showing a security camera feed. Of Marco, walking to class. He's having Marco watched, Elena said urgently. Right now. Damien looked at the phone, his expression hardening. He made a decision. Vincent, take Luca's phone. Extract every location his people are watching. Send teams to each one. He pressed the gun harder against Luca's skull. You're going to call off every man you have on Marco. You're going to issue a family-wide order that the Russos are untouchable. And then you and I are going to renegotiate territory lines until I'm satisfied. Do you understand? And if I refuse, then I start killing Santoros until someone smarter than you takes over. Damien's voice was ice. Your choice, Luca. Die a martyr or live to scheme another day. Fine. Truce. For now. For now, Damien agreed, finally lowering the gun. They left Luca humiliated but alive. A strategic choice that Elena was still processing in the car afterward. You could have killed him, she said. Why didn't you? Because you were right that night at the gallery. War is what he wants. It weakens me, drains resources, makes me vulnerable to other families. Damien took her hand. But also because you threw that bottle. You saved my life again, and I realized something. I'd rather have you alive in a world where Luca breathes than have revenge and lose you in the process. Elena stared at him. That's the most romantic and terrifying thing anyone's ever said to me. Welcome to my world. But Damien smiled, real and warm. Back at the building, in the safety of Damien's quarters, Elena finally allowed herself to shake. The adrenaline crash hit hard, and she found herself crying for reasons she couldn't fully articulate. Damien held her, just held her, until the storm passed. I killed someone tonight, Elena whispered. If that bottle hadn't hit Luca, if your people hadn't stopped his guards, people would be dead because I got involved. People are alive because you got involved, Damien corrected. You saved my life. You helped protect Marco. You were brave and smart and exactly what I needed. I'm becoming like you. No. Damien tilted her face up. You're becoming yourself. Stronger, harder, yes. But you're not me. You still threw a bottle because you couldn't stand to watch someone die, even someone who deserves it. I would have just shot him. Is that supposed to be comforting? It's supposed to be honest. Damien kissed her forehead. You asked me once what this makes you. Here's my answer, it makes you mine if you want to be. Not as property, not as debt, but as a partner. Someone who understands this world and chooses to stand in it with me anyway. Elena looked at this man. This complicated, violent, artistic, broken man who'd somehow become essential to her. What about after 2 years? When my contract ends? Then you choose. Stay or go. I won't stop you. Damien's voice was rough. But I'll hope you stay. I'll hope that whatever this is between us is worth the darkness it lives in. It shouldn't be, Elena said honestly. By every reasonable measure, I should run as far from you as possible. But I think I'm in love with you anyway. God help me. I'm in love with the monster who collected me. Damien's expression cracked, something raw and vulnerable showing through. I love you too. I didn't think I was capable anymore. But you proved me wrong about a lot of things. They kissed, slower this time, and Elena felt the weight of what they were admitting. This wasn't Stockholm Syndrome or survival instinct anymore. This was real, messy, complicated love growing in the worst possible soil. And somehow, against all odds, it was blooming anyway. 2 weeks later, Elena's life had transformed into something she barely recognized. She was still technically Damien's captive, still bound by a contract with 18 months remaining. But she was also his partner in every way that mattered. She helped run the galleries, advised on art acquisitions, and increasingly gave input on legitimate business strategies. Damien listened to her ideas, respected her intelligence, and treated her like an equal. In private, they were lovers learning each other's rhythms and scars. In public, they maintained careful distance, though Luca's attempt had made their connection an open secret. But Elena knew this fragile peace couldn't last. She was right. It happened on a Thursday. Elena was at the gallery with Sophia when Vincent burst in, his expression grim. Where's the boss? Meeting with the development team. What's wrong? Vincent hesitated, then showed her his phone. It was a news article. Federal investigation launched into cross-organization art holdings. Elena's stomach dropped. What does this mean? It means someone talked to the FBI. They're going to audit every piece Damien owns, every transaction. If they find evidence of money laundering, Vincent didn't finish the sentence. They'll arrest him. Or worse, some of those pieces were acquired through less than legal means. We're talking stolen art, forged provenance, black market sales. If the feds dig deep enough, they'll find bodies. Elena's mind raced. She knew this world was built on sand, but she'd let herself forget how easily it could collapse. What do? We clean house, get rid of anything questionable, bury the paper trail, and pray whoever talked doesn't have enough evidence to stick. Vincent's phone rang and he answered. His face went pale. Boss, we have a problem. Elena's brother just got picked up by federal agents. They're using him as leverage. The world tilted sideways. Marco, innocent Marco who knew nothing about any of this, now caught in the machinery of federal investigation and criminal empire. This is Luca, Elena said with sudden certainty. He couldn't beat Damien directly, so he went to the FBI. He's using the law to destroy him. Smart play, Sophia said grimly. The one enemy Damien can't just shoot. Elena's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered with shaking hands. Miss Russo, an official voice. This is Special Agent Morrison, FBI. We have your brother in custody. We'd like to ask you some questions about your employment with Damien Cross. And there it was. The trap closing. Choose her family or choose Damien. Cooperate and destroy the man she loved, or stay silent and watch Marco face charges he didn't deserve. Elena looked at Vincent and Sophia, both watching her with understanding. This was the moment. The choice she'd been hurtling toward since the night she signed that contract. I'm on my way, she told the agent. Then to Vincent, get Damien. Tell him I love him and I'm sorry, and I'm about to make the same choice he would make. I'm choosing Marco. Elena, wait. Vincent started, but she was already moving. In the car, her mind worked frantically. There had to be a way. Some path through this that saved everyone. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized the terrible truth. Someone had to fall. Someone had to pay. And she'd already decided it would be her. The FBI field office was everything she'd expected. Agent Morrison was a woman in her 40s. Miss Russo, thank you for coming in voluntarily. Morrison gestured to a chair. Your brother is down the hall. He's not under arrest, just answering questions. We're hoping you can help us fill in some blanks. What do you want to know? Elena kept her voice steady. Let's start with how you came to work for Damien Cross. And so Elena made her choice. She told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Her father's debt. The contract she'd signed. The work she'd done at the galleries. She painted herself as a victim forced into illegal activity, which wasn't entirely untrue. What she didn't mention was the love. The art studio. The way Damien looked at her like she was a Renaissance painting come to life. Those truths were hers alone. So you're saying Cross coerced you into money laundering? Morrison clarified. Yes. And you can provide evidence of this? Testify in court. Elena thought of Damien, probably learning right now what she was doing. Hating her. Feeling betrayed exactly like Valentina had betrayed him. History repeating in the cruelest way. But Marco would go free. Her father would be safe. And maybe, just maybe, Damien would survive this if she took the fall instead. Yes, Elena said. I'll testify, but only if Marco and my father receive full immunity. They knew nothing. Morrison smiled like she'd just won the lottery. We can arrange that. The words were barely out when the door burst open. Damien stood there, Vincent behind him, both looking like they'd run the whole way. Don't say another word, Damien ordered Elena. Then to Morrison, I'm her lawyer. This interview is over. Morrison raised an eyebrow. You're a lot of things, Mr. Cross, but a lawyer isn't one of them. Actually, I am. Columbia law, passed the bar. Never practiced because I had an empire to run. Damien's eyes never left Elena's face. And my client is invoking her right to counsel. Release her brother immediately, or I'll have every civil rights organization in Chicago down here within the hour. Your client was cooperating voluntarily. My client was coerced through threats against her family. I'll prove it in court if necessary. Damien extended his hand to Elena. Let's go. Elena stared at that offered hand. At the man who should hate her but was somehow here saving her anyway. Damien, I was trying to. I know what you were trying to do. And we'll discuss how phenomenally stupid it was later. His voice softened. But right now we're leaving. Together. Elena took his hand and let him pull her up. Marco appeared in the doorway, confused but unharmed, and the four of them walked out of the FBI building into the Chicago afternoon. In the car, the silence was deafening. Finally, Marco spoke. Someone want to tell me what the hell is going on? Why did the FBI grab me asking about money laundering and stolen art? Elena and Damien exchanged a look. Then Elena made another choice. Honesty. Because I've been working for a criminal organization to pay off Papa's debt. Damien Cross isn't just an art collector. He's mafia, Marco. And I've been in deep for 4 months. Doing things I'm not proud of to keep our family safe. Marco's face went through several expressions before landing on fury. You lied to me. All those calls, you lied. To protect you. If you knew the truth, you'd have tried to help, and you'd have gotten hurt. So instead you sold yourself to him? Marco glared at Damien. What kind of man takes a woman as payment for debt? The kind who's about to save both your lives, Damien said coldly. Luca Santoro, a rival, tipped off the FBI. He's trying to use federal investigation to take me down, and your family is collateral damage. The only way any of you survive this is if you trust me to handle it. Trust you? The criminal who's been holding my sister prisoner. Marco, please. Elena touched her brother's arm. It's complicated. More complicated than I can explain right now. But Damien isn't the villain here. At least, not the only one. They arrived back at Damien's building. Vincent had already mobilized lawyers, spinning a web of legal protection. Marco was given a guest room and told not to leave. Elena found herself back in Damien's office, finally alone with him. You were going to testify against me, Damien said quietly. I was going to take the fall for you, Elena corrected. Paint myself as the criminal mastermind. Say I'd been embezzling and forging documents, and you were an innocent victim of my schemes. Damien stared at her. That's the stupidest plan I've ever heard. It would have worked. You'd be free, Marco would be safe, and I'd be the only one in prison. And you think I could live with that? Watching you sacrifice yourself for me. Damien's voice rose. Did you learn nothing from Valentina's story? I don't survive losing people I love. Then what's your brilliant plan? Elena shouted back. Because from where I'm standing, we're trapped. The FBI is investigating, Luca's circling, and someone's going down. I was trying to make sure it wasn't you. They glared at each other, both breathing hard. Then Damien laughed, the sound slightly unhinged. You magnificent idiot, he said, pulling her into his arms. You were willing to go to prison for me. Of course I was. I love you. Elena clung to him. Even if you are a criminal art-collecting mafia boss with anger management issues. And I love you. Even if you are a self-sacrificing former captive with a martyr complex. Damien kissed her hard. But we're not doing it your way. We're doing it my way. Which is? We give them Luca. With everything. His money laundering, his ties to other families, every illegal thing he's ever done. We flip this investigation onto him so thoroughly that the FBI forgets we ever existed. Damien's eyes gleamed. And then we disappear for a while. Let my lawyers handle the cleanup while we figure out what comes next. Disappear where? Italy. I have a villa in Tuscany that no one knows about. We lay low, let the heat die down, and when we come back, we rebuild. Smaller, cleaner, more legitimate. Damien touched her face. I'm tired, Elena. Tired of the violence, the constant warfare, the looking over my shoulder. You made me want something different. So let's take it. Elena wanted to believe it could be that simple. But she thought of her father, of Marco, of all the lives tangled in this mess. What about my family? They come too. Giuseppe closes the restaurant temporarily. Marco takes a semester abroad. And we all disappear until the FBI realizes Luca is a much better target than me. Damien smiled. Consider it an extended Italian vacation. With witness protection overtones. It was insane. It would never work. But Elena found herself nodding anyway because the alternative was losing him. And she'd already decided that wasn't an option. Okay, she said. Let's disappear. The last thing Elena saw as they boarded Damien's private plane 3 days later was Chicago disappearing beneath the clouds. Beside her, Damien held her hand. Across the aisle, her father and Marco sat in stunned silence, still processing everything that had happened. Vincent stayed behind to manage the legal warfare. Sophia would run the galleries. And somewhere in Chicago, Luca Santoro was about to have the worst month of his life as every federal agency descended on him with evidence mysteriously delivered from anonymous sources. Elena knew this wasn't over. She knew running solved nothing permanently. But as Damien pulled her close, kissing her temple, she thought maybe they'd earned this moment. This breath before the next storm. What happens when we go back? She asked softly. I don't know, Damien admitted. But we'll figure it out together. Together? Elena repeated. and let herself believe it. The plane leveled off, heading toward the Italian sunrise. Behind them, the city of blood and debt grew smaller. Ahead, an uncertain future waited. But for now, in this moment between worlds, Elena Russo and Damien Cross were simply two people who'd found love in the darkest place possible. And somehow, against all odds, they were free. This is where part 1 ends, but the story is far from over. Damien and Elena have crossed the point of no return, choosing each other over everything else. But can love really survive in a world built on blood and lies? Will the FBI investigation destroy them? And what will Luca do when he realizes his plan has backfired? Find out in part 2 coming soon. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you don't miss it. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think Elena and Damien deserve their happy ending? Or are they too far gone? And don't forget to hit that like button if you want to see how this story ends. Watch out for part 2 where the real war begins.